Among the great souls which permeate history's ever-growing landscape, there are some whose radiance shines so bright that whole civilizations warm themselves by their light. These positions are typically reserved for religious leaders, though in the secular world, there have been a few. Perhaps the greatest among them, a man whose name is known even to those ears which philosophy is but a distant noise. This man was, of course, Confucius. The difficulty in Confucius lies not so much in the complexity of his doctrine, but in the fact that one could construct many different doctrines depending on what sources during China's long tumultuous history which the information is taken from. I wish to review briefly the works traditionally associated with the name before moving on to explain the doctrine as it is generally accepted today. First, we have what is known as the Five Qing, which describes various events in China ranging in date from 722 to 781 BCE. These have been loosely attributed to Confucius, though it is only the Qian which can, with any confidence, be said to have come from the master's hand. Second, we come to the Book of the Four Philosophers, often shortened to simply the Four Books. The first of them, the Lun Yun, Digested Conversations, known to us by the well-known title Confucian Analects. The second, the Ta Shou, or Great Learning, which has been attributed to Sang Shan, who is a known disciple of Confucius. The third book comes to us from Cheng Yang, the translation of which is most accepted as the Doctrine of the Mean, and can be given to the grandson of Confucius, Kung Chi, for ownership. The fourth and final book contains the works of Mencius. Within the memoirs of the Han Dynasty, there rests a chapter which illustrates the discordance in the keeping of records associated with Confucius. It goes as such. After the death of Confucius, there was an end of his exquisite words, and when his 70 disciples had passed away, violence began to be done to their meaning. It came about that there were 5 editions of the Qian, 4 of the Shi, and several of the Yi. Amid the disorder and collisions of the warring states, 481 to 422, truth and falsehood were still more in a state of warfare, and a sad confusion had marked the words of the various scholars. This calamity would continue until approximately the year 140, wherein Emperor Xiao Wu was disturbed enough by the state of affairs to build repositories wherein books might be stored for the benefit of future generations. We will attempt to piece together the Anthology of Confucius in order that we may paint a more accurate picture of the doctrine which has aided billions to live a life worthy of being called human. I think we would go amiss if we did not speak briefly about Confucius the man. Born approximately 552 in what is known today as the province of Shantung, he began work at a very early age owing to the premature death of his father, though it was not until the age of 20 that teaching became for him an occupation. We may take a passage from the Analects describing briefly, though ambiguously, the path his life followed. At 15, I set my heart upon learning. At 30, I had planted my feet firm upon the ground. At 40, I no longer suffered from perplexities. At 50, I know what were the biddings of heaven. At 60, I heard them with docile ear. At 70, I could follow the dictates of my own heart, for what I desired no longer overstepped the boundaries of right. We know that he spent some time in government, serving as a magistrate to the city of Chengdu, though after the state declined due to the Duke ignoring the counsel of Confucius and giving in to decadence and bribes, he began over a decade of wandering. At 69, after the Duke had been succeeded, he was asked to return wherein he remained until his death at the age of 73. We have some insight into the master's attitude later in life, as in a response to an inquiry concerning his current state of health, he writes, "He is simply a man who, in his eager pursuit of knowledge, forgets his food, who in his joy forgets his sorrows, and who does not perceive that old age is coming on." Most central to the doctrine put forth by Confucius was an ethics which prized tradition and took education of this tradition as indispensable towards inculcating the necessary moral principles required for a harmonious social existence, where justice and virtue reign supreme. In this system, there are 5 principal moral pillars which are emphasized and taken to contribute to the development and perfection of the individual and state. Ren may be described as something akin to benevolence or human goodness, and is perhaps the most important moral virtue in Confucianism. This characteristic is essential in allowing the individual to develop and maintain proper social relationships, and thus is essential for a harmonious society where each individual can work alongside their neighbor with compassion and good faith. It is something which can only be developed through dedicated self-reflection, education, and practice. The second pillar, Li, encompasses the various social etiquette and rituals which are harbored and cultivated within a particular society. It constitutes an important aspect of his philosophy for the role it plays in maintaining order within the family, locality, and state as a whole. It aids in society's ability to regulate itself by firmly establishing societal norms and adherence to a social hierarchy. Social cohesion remains paramount in the perfect state. While trite, it bears repeating. A house divided will not stand. So too goes the state. Moving forward, Shao is a fitting next pillar to explain, as like Li, it stems from societal norms and respect, but more specifically respect for one's parents and ancestors. If one is intelligent and far-seeing, they will build a lofty structure, the state, upon a firm foundation, the family. This may come in the form of respect, honor, or material support. What is important is that one adheres to their duty to ensure the well-being of the family and society. Fourth on the list is Yi, and is translated as justice or righteousness, and as in most ethical codes, implores the individual to simply do what is right regardless of circumstance, even in the instances where harm may come to your own person as a consequence of your right action. We must look to each circumstance with the greater good of society in mind. We need not look very far to see the havoc which petty greed and prejudice can bring to a family, locality, or society as a whole. The final pillar, Zhang, is the characteristic best described as reliability or loyalty. It is to be true-hearted in one's support and devotion, whether this be to the father, the mother, the sovereign, or state. And as with all of the other pillars previously spoken about, it is first and foremost in the service of social order, cohesion, and preservation. A proviso that is emphasized by Confucius in this pillar of his ethical code is that one must maintain Yi, meaning that moral integrity must always be placed above Zhang, as blind obedience to a tyrant who betrays these 5 pillars will in consequence mean that the betrayal is shared. Zhanzhou is the product which is produced when a person adheres earnestly to these 5 moral pillars. It is analogous to the great-souled man of Aristotle, the blessed of Spinoza, and the philosopher kings of Plato. We see it most frequently translated as noble person or gentleman, and serves as an ideal for others to model their life after. Benevolence, Ren. Adherence to custom and proper etiquette, Li. Familial piety, Shao. Righteousness, Yi. And loyalty, Zhang, are the essence of the Zhanzhou, and the ideal individual in the eyes of Confucius. The Politics of Confucius is one which stems directly from his ethics. It was a political philosophy which held firmly to a traditional value system, meaning that custom, ritual, and observance of the traditionally accepted hierarchy is necessary to adhere to if social cohesion is to be maintained. He was not so enamored with democracy as we in the West are today, and believed it wise to ensure that the best among the populace be selected and encouraged to run for public office. Nothing so disastrous could befall a nation than for a dunce to be elected to office. He believed it important, like in Plato's Republic, to ensure that all have an equal opportunity to show that they have what is required to assume the highest ranks of public office, and to earnestly consider their candidacy, regardless of social or economic status. If the individual has the moral integrity and intellectual capacity to stand as king, let them rule. Moral integrity ranks highest among the characteristics which must be present with any individual or collective who wish to rule the state, as it would be a prerequisite for attaining the ideal form of government, or renjiang, meaning benevolent government. This is a manifestation of government in which self-restraint, honor, and humility lead to a system where the welfare of the state and of its people are placed above that of the governing body without fail. In such a system, revolution would be unlikely, as the citizens would grow to respect their leaders, engendering the familial loyalty and piety which has been spoken of in the moral pillar of Shao. Failure to adhere to this mandate of heaven, as he called the mandate given to those rulers of high moral integrity who ruled with benevolence, would rightly lead to resistance and likely destruction. This resistance, called yifan, or righteous resistance, is a natural right or imperative each individual has to oppose any system of government whose rule is enforced through oppression, deception, or violence. It would be difficult to find an individual or system of thought which has so thoroughly, and for such an extended period of time, permeated the hearts and minds of a people than the philosophy of Confucius had done for the Chinese. It is not enough to say just this, as even far removed from the borders of China, the thought of the great sage shapes and refines countless minds, young and old alike. Of course, this system is not without its faults, such as the apparent rigidity, which would likely lead to vehement resistance when advocating for change, or its discouragement of individualism, which makes the modern Western reader shudder. But I think that all can confirm that the practical advice given to us from millennia ago makes each of us at least a little greater than we were before. As it is my preference to read Western prose, I have not explored much Eastern thought on this channel, though it is my aim to wade a bit deeper into these waters and hope you will all continue to support my work through this. As always, thank you for spending some of your valuable time talking philosophy with me. Until next time.